You have changed the plan. You have changed the job, the city, the relationship, the strategy, the routine, and the intention. You have started over more than once, and each time you started with genuine hope, real effort, and a sincere desire for something different. And yet, if you look carefully at where you are now, something familiar is looking back at you. The same pressure around money, the same quiet ceiling on your confidence, the same pattern wearing a different name. You changed everything, and somehow the same life appeared again. James Allen saw this long before you experienced it. He did not call it bad luck. He did not call it fate. He called it the hidden self, the inner builder that walks with you into every new beginning and quietly reconstructs the same structure from the inside out. The question his teaching forces you to face is not whether you are working hard enough. The question is whether the self doing the building has changed. Because if it has not, then every new plan is simply the old life under new construction. You know what this looks like. You have seen it in your own life, perhaps more times than you want to count. There is a period of real movement, a genuine sense that things are shifting, that this time is different, that the new decision or the new direction will carry you somewhere the old path could not. And then, slowly, without any single dramatic moment, the familiar begins to settle back in. The numbers in the account return to the same uncomfortable range. The anxiety about money, the low-grade constant hum of financial worry resumes its position in your daily life as though it never left. The money stress does not always look the same. Sometimes it is the fear of a bill. Sometimes it is the slow erosion of savings that were supposed to grow. Sometimes it is the income that arrives and then dissolves before it can become security. You change the source, you change the habit, you change the plan. And still the stress finds its way back to you. Not because you are careless, not because you are undeserving, but because something beneath the surface is holding the old financial architecture in place, and no new strategy has yet reached it. The self-doubt carries the same weight. It may be quieter in moments of momentum, but it is never fully gone. It whispers at the edge of opportunity. It hesitates at the threshold of a larger vision. It asks whether this time will really be different, and it does so with a familiarity that suggests it has always lived somewhere close to you. You have tried to silence it with accomplishments, with evidence, with external validation, and sometimes these things work for a season. But the doubt returns to its old address because the inner self that houses it has not yet evicted it. The delays follow the same rhythm. There is always something that arrives almost on time, almost in the right form, almost in the amount that would change the situation, but not quite. The opportunity appears and then stalls. The connection forms and then dissolves. The breakthrough begins and then retreats. You tell yourself, this is circumstance, this is timing, this is the external world behaving unpredictably. And sometimes that is true. But James Allen would ask you to look deeper than the delay and ask what expectation inside you is, recognizing that delay as home. The relationship with opportunity follows a pattern that is almost architectural. Some people consistently attract opportunity and then mismanage it. Some people attract it and then self-sabotage at the last moment. Some people do not recognize it at all until it has passed. Some people reach a certain level and then unconsciously retreat because the new level does not feel familiar enough to occupy safely. You may have noticed one of these rhythms in your own life. The pattern repeats, not because opportunity is choosing against you, but because a hidden self is translating every opportunity through a familiar lens and producing a familiar result. The fear is perhaps the most persistent of all. Not always the dramatic fear that announces itself clearly, but the quieter fear that operates beneath the level of conscious awareness. The fear that says this cannot last. The fear that says something will go wrong before it fully arrives. The fear that says you must control the situation because trust is too dangerous. The fear that says you have been disappointed before and you will be disappointed again. This fear does not simply respond to circumstances. It anticipates them. It prepares for them. It quietly arranges your inner world in alignment with what it already expects. And then the outer world obliges. You have tried to address these patterns with more effort. You have worked harder, planned more carefully, studied more diligently, disciplined your habits and committed to change with genuine sincerity. And none of this is wasted. But if the inner self doing the working, the planning, the studying, and the committing is the same self that produced the original pattern, then all of that effort is building a new structure on an unchanged foundation. The structure may look different for a while, but given enough time, it will settle back into the shape the foundation has always supported. This is not a small or simple problem. It is not a matter of finding the right system or the right mentor or the right opportunity. It is a matter of understanding something that most people never pause long enough to examine. The same life keeps rebuilding itself, not because your external circumstances are fixed, and not because the universe has decided against you, but because the inner builder that constructs your life experience has not yet been replaced. And until that builder changes, every new beginning will eventually arrive at a familiar destination. Here is the contradiction that James Allen's entire teaching is designed to expose. You desire a new life while continuing to bring the old self into the construction of it. You write new goals using the handwriting of old expectations. You begin new efforts from the posture of old identity. You stand before new possibilities and interpret them through old emotional habits. The desire is real. The intention is sincere. But the architect has not changed, and so the building, however it begins, eventually resembles every building that came before it. Think about what happens when you set a new financial goal. The goal itself may be genuinely larger than before. The number may be different. The strategy may be updated. But underneath the goal, the self that is setting it is carrying a particular relationship to money, a particular expectation of how money moves in your life, a particular belief about whether you are the kind of person who achieves that level, or whether you are the kind of person who gets close and then falls back. That relationship, that expectation, that belief does not appear in the goal statement, but it appears in the outcome. The contradiction lives in the space between the declared desire and the identity that is actually operating. You declare that you want more, but the hidden self is running a quieter program that says, more is not safe, more is not mine, more always leaves, or more is for people whose lives look different from mine. You are not aware that this program is running. You would not consciously choose it, but it is the self beneath the self, and it is the one that actually shapes the outcome by shaping the decisions, the reactions, the interpretations, and the emotional positions you take each day. The new plan encounters the old identity at every decision point. You decide to pursue the new opportunity, but the old self interprets the first obstacle as confirmation that it was too good to be true. You decide to believe in a larger future, but the old self returns to familiar mental scripts the moment comfort disappears. You decide to expect something different, but the old expectation is stronger than the new declaration because it has been practiced for years, and the new declaration has been practiced for days. The new plan does not stand a chance against an unchanged builder. This is not a failure of intelligence. Many people who repeat the same life patterns are deeply intelligent. This is not a failure of discipline. Many people who rebuild the same life are working extremely hard. This is not a failure of desire. The desire is real and often intense. The contradiction is that none of these qualities, intelligence, discipline, or desire, are sufficient to change the outcome if the inner self, the actual builder of experience, remains unchanged. You can want a new life with every conscious fiber you possess and still find the old life reconstructing itself around you if the hidden self has not changed its blueprint. This is why the same conversations keep happening, the same arguments, the same misunderstandings, the same dynamic with money, the same distance from the level you are reaching for. It is not because the external world is conspiring to hold you where you are. It is because the inner self is operating from a design that was established long before the current circumstances, and it is faithfully reproducing what it knows. It does not need your cooperation. It does not need your agreement. It operates beneath the level of conscious decision and produces results that feel like external fate, but are actually internal architecture. The surface changes, the job changes, the city changes, the relationship changes, the resolution changes, and something inside watches it all and quietly rebuilds what it recognizes as home, not out of malice, not out of self-destruction, but out of the simple operation of inner law. The self that you have not yet changed is the self that is still making the decisions that matter most. Not the dramatic decisions, not the ones you deliberate over carefully, but the 10,000 small decisions you make without awareness every single day. Those decisions are built by the hidden self, and they are building your life. James Allen's teaching does not offer comfort by telling you that none of this is your responsibility. That would be a false comfort. What it offers is something more valuable, a precise diagnosis of the actual source of the repetition. The problem is not out there. The problem is not the economy, not the people around you, not the timing, not the lack of a better strategy. The problem is the inner builder who walks with you into every new chapter and quietly lays the same foundation. That builder is real, that builder is identifiable, and that builder can change, but only after it has been seen. James Allen was not writing about positive thinking in the way that phrase is commonly understood today. He was writing about something far more precise and far more demanding. His central teaching is that thought forms character, and character shapes destiny. These are not decorative words. They are a description of a law that operates whether you are aware of it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether you are ready for it or not. The law does not pause while you decide whether you believe in it. It is already operating in your life right now, through the thoughts you are practicing, the character those thoughts are forming, and the circumstances that character is quietly shaping. When Allen wrote that a person is literally what they think, he was not making a motivational claim. He was describing the relationship between inner condition and outer expression. He saw clearly that most people look at their circumstances and experience them as external facts that have arrived from outside themselves. They see the money problem as a money problem. They see the relationship difficulty as a relationship difficulty. They see the career stagnation as a career stagnation. They interpret the external form as the primary reality and spend most of their energy trying to manage, manipulate, or escape the external form. But Allen's teaching says something else entirely. He says the external form is the shadow of the inner condition, and you cannot change the shadow by arguing with it. Thought forms character. This is the first movement of the law. It is not that one single thought produces one single event. It is that repeated thoughts, held with emotional consistency, accumulate into what you become. The thought you return to most reliably, the expectation you carry most habitually, the emotional position you occupy most consistently. These are not simply attitudes. They are the material from which character is built. Character is not a fixed trait you were born with. It is an accumulated pattern of inner response, and you are building it through thought every single day, whether you are aware of it or not. Character shapes destiny. This is the second movement of the law. When Allen used the word destiny, he was not speaking of something predetermined or mystical. He was speaking of the life that emerges from who you have become. Destiny, in Allen's understanding, is not what happens to you. It is what your character organizes around itself. A person of a particular character will consistently find, attract, and produce a particular quality of life, not because the universe is making judgments, but because character expresses itself through choices, interpretations, speech, attention, and action. And those expressions collectively build a life. This is why the law operates invisibly. You are not aware that you are building your character through thought, because thought feels so natural, so automatic, so much like simply responding to reality. You do not notice that you are rehearsing a financial fear for the 14th time in a week, because each instance feels like a legitimate response to a real situation. You do not notice that you are practicing self-doubt, because each moment of doubt feels like reasonable caution in the face of genuine uncertainty. You are not performing these patterns deliberately, but you are performing them, and each performance is a small deposit into the character that is shaping your destiny. Allen was careful to say that this is not a cruel law. It is a precise law, and precision, once understood, becomes freedom. The same law that has been building an unwanted life can be directed through the same mechanism of repeated thought and accumulated character to build a different one. The law does not favor the wealthy over the poor, the educated over the uneducated, the fortunate over the unfortunate. It operates equally in every human being through the same principle. Thought accumulates into character. Character expresses itself as circumstance. Change the thought, change the character, change the circumstance, not instantly, not magically, but inevitably. Consider what this means when you examine your daily inner life. Every time you return to the thought that money is always difficult, you are depositing into a character that relates to money with difficulty. Every time you practice the assumption that success is something that happens to other people, you are forming a character that positions itself outside of success. Every time you rehearse the expectation of delay, disappointment, or loss, you are building a self whose relationship to opportunity, resource, and possibility is organized around that expectation. None of these deposits feel significant in the moment, but their accumulation is your hidden self. The hidden self is not a mysterious entity, living somewhere separate from you. It is simply the sum of what you have been practicing. It is the character you have been building through repeated thought, emotional habit, and consistent inner response. It is the you that operates automatically when conscious intention relaxes. It is the builder that walks into every new situation and begins constructing the familiar because the familiar is what it knows how to build. Alan's teaching asks you to look at this hidden self, not with horror or shame, but with the sober clarity of someone who finally understands why the same life keeps appearing. When Alan wrote about the inner world being the cause and the outer world being the effect, he was not dismissing external reality. He was locating the lever. The external circumstances, the money, the relationships, the opportunities, the delays, are effects. They are real effects. They have real weight and real consequence, but they are not the cause. The cause is the inner world of repeated thought, accumulated character, and habitual emotional response. And the teaching that changes everything is this: you have access to the cause. You do not always have access to the effect, but you always have access to the thought you choose next, the expectation you practice today, and the character you are either reinforcing or revising in this present moment. This is why Alan's teaching has endured, not because it flatters, not because it promises ease, but because it is accurate. It describes the mechanism of life building with a precision that matches what sincere observers of their own lives eventually discover. The self you habitually occupy becomes the life you consistently inhabit. The thought you repeatedly practice becomes the world you repeatedly experience, not as punishment, not as reward, simply as law. The same law that has built the old life can build the new one, but only when the inner builder changes. The law requires honesty. It requires the willingness to look at what you have actually been practicing rather than what you have been intending. It requires the courage to see that your thoughts, your emotional habits, your habitual expectations, and your consistent inner responses are not simply reactions to a world that exists independently of you. They are the architects of that world. And if the architecture is familiar, it is because the architect has remained familiar. This is not a comfortable truth, but it is a liberating one. Alan's teaching can be summarized in a single sentence that carries enormous weight. You do not get what you want, you get what you are, not what you declare, not what you wish for, not what you work toward with your conscious mind, but what you are at the level of repeated inner practice, accumulated character, and habitual emotional identity. This is the law, and it is the law that explains why the same life keeps rebuilding itself, despite every sincere effort to change it. The effort was real, but the being behind the effort was unchanged, and the being behind the effort is what the law responds to. The phrase hidden self can sound mystical, even threatening. It can sound like there is a dark force inside you that is working against your conscious intentions, some shadowy part of you that has its own agenda and undermines every positive effort you make. But this is not what James Allen meant, and it is important to release that interpretation. The hidden self is not separate from you. It is not working against you. It is simply the part of you that is operating from the pattern you have most thoroughly established. It is not hidden because it is secret. It is hidden because it is automatic, and we rarely examine what operates automatically. Think of a musician who has practiced a particular technique for many years. When that musician sits down to play, they do not consciously choose every movement of every finger. The accumulated practice has become automatic. The body knows what to do without deliberate instruction. This is not a flaw, it is efficiency. The nervous system learns what is rehearsed and makes it automatic, so that conscious attention can be freed for other things. The hidden self operates by the same principle. It is the accumulated practice of your inner life made automatic. The thoughts you have rehearsed most consistently, the expectations you have occupied most reliably, the emotional responses you have returned to most habitually, these have become automatic. And automatic is not visible, because visible requires attention, and attention is elsewhere. The hidden self becomes the life architect precisely because it is automatic. When you walk into a new financial situation, you do not consciously decide how to feel about it. The hidden self already has a practiced response. When opportunity appears, you do not carefully deliberate about whether to recognize it and engage with it. The hidden self has a prepared interpretation that arrives before conscious thought does. When a challenge appears, the automatic self has a habitual emotional position that it occupies within moments, and that position determines what decisions follow, what actions are taken, and what outcomes are shaped. The repeated life pattern is not produced by dramatic moments. It is produced by the accumulation of automatic inner responses to ordinary daily experiences. The money thought you entertained during the morning, the worry you rehearsed during the commute, the expectation you carry into a conversation about opportunity, the emotional retreat you practice when something does not go as planned. The self-talk that accompanies each small decision, these are not grand events, they are quiet, habitual, automatic exercises, and they are collectively building the life you are living. James Allen described this with the metaphor of the mind as a garden. The garden grows what is planted and tended. It does not grow something different simply because the gardener wishes it would. It does not skip a harvest because the gardener is disappointed with the results. It grows what is sown. Thoughts, Allen said, are seeds. And the habitual thoughts, the ones you return to most reliably, are the seeds you have planted most thoroughly. The hidden self is the garden, and the harvest, the life you are experiencing, is not a mystery. It is the natural result of what has been most consistently grown inside. The forgotten meaning of Allen's teaching is this: the life you are rebuilding is not being rebuilt by your intentions. It is being rebuilt by your inner habits. And inner habits are quieter, older, and more consistent than intentions. An intention lives at the level of conscious decision. A habit lives at the level of automatic response. When intention and habit conflict, as they do every time you try to change your life while retaining your old inner patterns, the habit wins most of the time. Not because the intention is weak, but because the habit is practiced, deep, automatic, and invisible. This is the meaning of the hidden self, the self that operates through habit, through automatic emotional response, through habitual expectation, and practiced inner language. It is hidden because you are not watching it. You are watching the external circumstances. You are monitoring the bank account, the opportunity, the relationship, the strategy. While all of your attention is on the surface, the hidden self is quietly, automatically, without any need for your awareness, doing what it has always done. And what it has always done produces what it has always produced. The life repeats because the inner builder has not changed. This is the forgotten meaning. It is not that change is impossible. It is not that you are condemned to the pattern. It is that change at the level of circumstance must be preceded by change at the level of inner habit, inner expectation, and inner identity. The external life is a mirror, and when the mirror keeps showing you the same image, the teaching of the Master says, do not keep rearranging what stands before the mirror. Change what is standing there. Allen's forgotten teaching is that the quality of your repeated inner world, not your occasional inspired intentions, but your daily automatic inner life, is determining the quality of your outer experience. The inner life that most people give the least attention to is the one that has the most influence. The thoughts you think when no one is watching. The expectations you carry when no formal decision is being made. The emotional home you return to when the day is ordinary. This is where your life is being built. This is where the hidden self is working. And this is where the teaching must reach if anything is going to actually change. The hope in Allen's teaching is precise. Because the hidden self is made of practice, it can be remade through practice. Because it is built from repeated thought, it can be rebuilt through different repeated thought. Because it operates as habit, it can be reformed through new habit. The mechanism that built the old self is the same mechanism that can build the new one. You do not need a different law. You need a different practice. And you need the willingness to apply that practice at the level where the real builder lives, beneath intention, beneath desire, in the quiet, automatic inner world that James Allen spent his entire work teaching you to see. There is an error at the center of most sincere self-improvement efforts, and it is almost never identified. The error is not a lack of effort. The error is not a lack of desire or intelligence or sincerity. The error is far more subtle than any of these, and it is precisely its subtlety that has kept it hidden from you. The error is this. You have been trying to construct a new life with the same inner blueprint. You have changed the materials, the location, the timing, and the strategy, but the design being followed belongs to the old self. And a new structure built from an old design is, at its core, the same structure. Imagine a builder who is commissioned to construct a new house. The old house was cramped, dark, poorly ventilated, and uncomfortable. Everyone agrees the old house must go. A new location is selected. New materials are purchased. A new crew is hired. New furniture is chosen. And the builder, without examining whether the blueprint in their hands is new, begins construction. The house rises on the new lot with new walls and new floors and new windows. And then the people who move in realize slowly that the layout is identical to the old house. The rooms are in the same configuration. The same darkness appears in the same corners. The same cramped feeling returns. Because the builder never changed the blueprint, they changed everything around the blueprint without changing the blueprint itself. This is what has been happening in your life. The blueprint is the collection of your habitual fears, your practiced expectations, your recurring self-assessments, and your automatic emotional responses to money, opportunity, success, and change. These are not thoughts you chose deliberately. They were formed over years of experience, response, and repetition. They became the design file you carry, and every time you begin a new effort, a new job, a new financial plan, a new relationship with prosperity, this blueprint is the first thing you bring to the site. The same fears appear in new situations. The fear of not being enough follows you into the new role. The fear that success will be taken away follows you into the new income. The fear that things always go wrong for you follows you into the new plan. These fears are not irrational. They feel like wisdom because they have been confirmed by past experience. But James Allen would ask you to consider whether those past experiences were confirmations of external reality or reflections of a blueprint that was already in place when those experiences were shaped. The same expectations arrive in new places. You expect money to be difficult, and so you interpret every complexity in the new situation as evidence of the familiar difficulty. You expect opportunity to slip away before you can secure it, and so you either rush into poor decisions or hesitate past the window of action. You expect to work harder than seems fair, and so you interpret ordinary effort as insufficient and push past healthy limits. These expectations are not responses to the new situation. They arrived with you from the old one. They are part of the blueprint. The same language reconstructs the same inner reality. You say, "I never get ahead," not as a casual complaint, but as an accurate description of your inner relationship with progress. You say, "This always happens to me," not as an exaggeration, but as a genuine expectation that has been confirmed enough times to feel true. You say, "Money always finds a way to leave," not as dark humor, but as a practiced belief about the behavior of money in your life. These are not merely words. Allen's understanding of the relationship between thought and character tells us that these are seeds. Spoken with emotional conviction, repeated with habitual frequency, they are actively forming a character that experiences exactly what they describe. The same emotional reactions rebuild the same inner positions. When something goes wrong, the old self has a practiced emotional response that arrives before any conscious deliberation. This response is not simply a feeling, it is a posture. It is the inner self taking up a familiar position in relation to difficulty, and from that position, a particular set of decisions follows. If the practiced response to difficulty is withdrawal, then withdrawal shapes the next action. If the practiced response is panic, then panic distorts the interpretation of options. If the practiced response is resignation, then resignation selects only what confirms the familiar outcome. The reaction is the blueprint operating in real time. The invisible error is rarely diagnosed because it looks like the circumstances are the problem. When money is tight, the money seems like the problem. When opportunity does not materialize, the lack of opportunity seems like the problem. When relationships with success are strained, the external factors seem like the problem. And Alan does not deny that external problems are real. They are real. They have weight and consequence. But the teaching insists that beneath every repeated external problem, there is a repeated inner condition that is not an innocent bystander. It is an active participant in the architecture of the situation. You have been sincerely working on the building. You have been renovating, relocating, and redesigning the exterior. And this work is not worthless. External changes can create temporary relief, new context, and new stimulus, but they cannot change the blueprint operating inside the builder. And the builder always brings the blueprint to the new site. The renovation of the exterior is valuable only if it is accompanied by the reconstruction of the interior. And the interior that matters most is not the visible interior of habits and schedules. It is the deeper interior of habitual expectation, practiced emotional response, and the quiet, ongoing conversation the self is having with itself about who it is and what it can receive. The error does not mean you failed. It means you were working on the visible layer while the real construction was happening beneath it. Every serious student of Alan's teaching has had to face this moment, the moment when you realize that the effort was genuine but the error was real. And facing that moment is not defeat. It is the beginning of the only change that can produce a genuinely different life. Because the moment you see the blueprint clearly is the moment you gain access to it. And access is everything. You cannot change what you cannot see. But once you can see it, the law that built the old blueprint can be used to build a new one. This is the confrontation James Allen's teaching requires. Not a confrontation with the external world, not a confrontation with the people or the economy or the circumstance, but a confrontation with the blueprint, the quiet, practiced automatic design file that the hidden self has been using to rebuild the same structure in every new location. That blueprint is real. That blueprint has been operating. And that blueprint, and not the external world, is the primary territory of your transformation. The correction begins at the level of the error, not at the level of the symptom. Changing the plan without changing the blueprint is treating the symptom. The symptom can be managed, but it returns because the source has not been addressed. The source is the inner builder carrying the old design. And reaching that builder, seeing the design clearly and beginning the deliberate work of redrawing it, is what Alan's entire body of teaching is ultimately calling you to do. There is a reason this error persists. It is not that people are foolish or careless. It is that changing the external feels like action, and action feels like progress. There is immediate evidence that something is happening when you update the strategy, change the environment, revise the plan, or pursue a new direction. You can see the movement. You can feel the momentum. The external world provides tangible markers of activity, and tangible markers are deeply reassuring when the inner world is filled with uncertainty and discomfort. The error persists because it is far more comfortable to change what is visible than to examine what is hidden. Changing identity is genuinely difficult in a way that changing a strategy is not. Strategy can be updated in an afternoon. A new job can be accepted in a single decision. A new city can be moved to in a season. These changes require real effort, but they are contained, finite, and visible in their scope. Changing the inner builder, the accumulated pattern of habitual expectation, practiced emotional response, and deep identity, requires a kind of sustained interior work that has no clear beginning, no visible endpoint, and no immediate external confirmation. The inner work is real, but it is invisible, and most people will naturally gravitate toward visible action because visible action provides the immediate feedback that the inner work cannot yet offer. The error also feels like wisdom because external changes sometimes do produce genuine results, at least temporarily. The new environment may stimulate new thinking. The new strategy may open a door that the old approach had closed. The new relationship may provide support that was missing before. These genuine positive results from external change are not illusions. They are real improvements. But they also become part of the error's self-defense mechanism. Because they confirm that changing the external produces results, the conclusion drawn is that more external change is the solution. The blueprint that is operating beneath the results is never examined because the results seem to vindicate the approach. This is why the pattern repeats on a long enough timeline, even after external change. The new environment begins to feel like the old one. The new strategy begins to encounter the same obstacles in new forms. The new beginning eventually arrives at a familiar middle, and each time the external factors are identified as the explanation. The environment was not right. The strategy was incomplete. The timing was off. The people were not supportive enough. There is always an external explanation available, and the external explanation is not always wrong. But it is consistently incomplete because the blueprint is never examined. External action also feels like wisdom because it is taught, praised, and rewarded. The culture of achievement celebrates decisive external action. It celebrates moving, changing, deciding, strategizing, and pursuing. It does not celebrate the quiet, uncomfortable, unglamorous work of examining your habitual inner life and identifying the patterns that are producing unwanted results. That kind of work does not appear in a highlight reel. It does not receive public recognition. It is slow, private, and often humbling, and so the energy goes where the recognition is, which is the visible, external, action-oriented layer of change. James Allen understood this temptation and wrote against it, not with condemnation, but with clarity. His teaching does not say external action is worthless. It says external action without inner transformation is insufficient to produce lasting change. The action is necessary. The decision is necessary. The effort is necessary. But all of it must be accompanied by the deeper work of changing the inner builder. Without that deeper work, the best external changes will eventually be absorbed by the old blueprint and shaped into a familiar pattern wearing new clothes. The balanced understanding Allen offers is this: change the outer circumstances, yes, but do not mistake outer change for inner transformation. Change the plan, yes, but also examine the builder who is implementing the plan. Move to the new environment, yes, but bring a new self into it. Take the new action, yes, but take it from a renewed inner position. External and internal change are not enemies. They are partners. But the partnership only works when the inner change is given equal or greater attention than the outer change. And for most people, for most of their lives, it has not been. Recognizing this imbalance is not a reason for self-criticism. It is a reason for reorientation. The energy that has been going entirely into external strategy can now be partially redirected toward the internal architecture. The attention that has been entirely focused on the visible circumstances can now begin to include regular examination of the invisible blueprint. The sincere desire for a new life, which is already present, can now be applied at the level that will actually produce one. This is not a defeat of everything you have tried before. It is the completion of it. Allen's teaching asks you to hold both. Honor the value of external effort and decision. Do not become passive or fatalistic about circumstance. Act, decide, pursue. But while you are acting and deciding and pursuing, also examine the blueprint. Also watch the inner builder. Also bring deliberate attention to the thoughts you are practicing, the expectations you are carrying, and the identity you are reinforcing or revising through each daily experience. This is not two separate projects. It is one complete project. The outer work and the inner work together constitute the full scope of the change that James Allen spent his life teaching. The inner blueprint is not stored somewhere abstract or inaccessible. It lives in the thoughts you return to most reliably, the assumptions you carry into each new day, and the quiet inner narrative that runs beneath your deliberate conscious activity. It is not a single belief or a single fear. It is a constellation of practiced inner positions that together form a coherent design, a design that your life then follows with remarkable consistency. To understand the mechanism by which the same life keeps rebuilding itself, you must first understand what this blueprint actually contains. The blueprint contains recurring thoughts about your relationship with money. Not the occasional thought, but the habitual thought, the one that surfaces reliably during moments of stress, planning, or opportunity. Thoughts such as, "This always happens to me when I start to get ahead," or "Money comes and then leaves before I can secure it," or "I work harder than most people and earn less than I should." These are not casual observations. They are practiced beliefs that have been confirmed enough times to feel like accurate descriptions of reality. And because they feel accurate, they are never examined. They are simply continued. The blueprint contains assumptions about what is possible for you specifically, as distinct from what is possible in general. You may believe that prosperity is possible for human beings in principle, but the hidden self holds a separate, quieter belief about whether prosperity is specifically possible for you, given your history, your background, your past mistakes, and your current starting point. This personalized assumption is more powerful than any general belief about prosperity because it is the one operating at the level of automatic behavior. When opportunity appears, it is this personalized assumption that determines whether you engage with it as something that could belong to you or as something that belongs to a different kind of person. The blueprint contains an expectation of ceiling. There is a level at which the hidden self feels at home, and above that level, a quiet discomfort begins to operate. You may not recognize this discomfort as discomfort. It may present itself as practical concern, as caution, as the wisdom of not counting chickens, as the need to be realistic. But beneath all of these reasonable-sounding presentations, there is a practiced inner position that says, "This level is home, and above it is unfamiliar territory." And what is unfamiliar is interpreted by the automatic self as unsafe. This is why some people consistently sabotage circumstances that are moving them beyond their practiced ceiling, not consciously, but through a series of automatic decisions that collectively return them to what is familiar. The blueprint contains a rehearsed language. The specific words and phrases you use habitually when describing your financial situation, your relationship with success, your prospects, and your challenges are not casual. They are ongoing affirmations of a particular inner position. When you say, "I never get ahead," you are not merely reporting, you are reinforcing. When you say, "This always happens to me," you are not merely observing, you are practicing an identity. When you say, "Success is not meant for me," you are not being honest about external reality. You are depositing into a character that experiences itself as excluded from the life it desires. Allen's teaching on thought as the formative cause of character applies with particular force to habitual spoken language, because spoken language carries both thought and emotional convictions simultaneously. The blueprint contains emotional reflexes. These are the practiced ways of feeling that arrive automatically in response to particular kinds of experience. The reflex of anxiety when money is discussed. The reflex of withdrawal when a large opportunity presents itself. The reflex of skepticism when something positive appears. The reflex of defeat when an early obstacle arrives. The reflex of resignation when effort does not produce immediate results. These are not character flaws. They are practiced responses. They were formed through repeated experience and have been rehearsed so many times that they now arrive before conscious thought does. And because they arrive first, they set the emotional conditions under which all subsequent decisions are made. The blueprint contains a practiced identity narrative, the ongoing inner story you tell about who you are in relation to money, success, opportunity, and abundance. This narrative may sound something like, "I am someone who struggles financially," or "I am someone who never quite gets to where I want to be," or "I am someone who works hard but does not receive in proportion to the effort," or "I am someone whom good things approach and then leave." These narratives feel like accurate self-descriptions because they have been confirmed by experience. But the teaching of James Allen asks a more penetrating question. Did the experience confirm the narrative, or did the narrative shape the experience? The answer upon honest examination is usually both. The narrative was shaped by experience, and then the narrative shaped further experience, and the two have been reinforcing each other ever since. The blueprint contains a practiced relationship with safety. The old self has defined safety in terms of the familiar. Familiar difficulty is safer than unfamiliar success. Familiar limitations are safer than unfamiliar expansion. Familiar struggle is safer than unfamiliar ease. This is counterintuitive, and you would never consciously choose difficulty over ease. But the automatic self is not choosing between difficulty and ease. It is choosing between familiar and unfamiliar. And familiar always wins when the choice is being made automatically, without deliberate attention. The blueprint contains the specific thoughts you entertain when no formal decision is being made, the idle thoughts during commutes, the background thoughts during meals, the thoughts that accompany ordinary tasks. These are often considered trivial precisely because they are not attached to formal decisions. But Allen's teaching says there is no such thing as a trivial thought in the context of character formation. Every thought, including the idle automatic background thought, is either reinforcing or revising the character that is shaping your circumstances. The thoughts that feel too small to matter are the ones accumulating most reliably, because they are the most practiced. The blueprint contains an expectation about what effort produces. If the practiced inner position is that effort is rarely rewarded in proportion to its investment, then every effort is undertaken from a posture of anticipated disappointment. And anticipated disappointment shapes the quality of the effort, the interpretation of results, the persistence through obstacles, and the willingness to continue when confirmation does not arrive quickly. The expectation is not merely a mental note, it is a lived inner experience that colors every action taken and every result interpreted. The blueprint contains a practiced degree of permission. There is a level of goodness, success, ease, and prosperity that the hidden self has practiced granting itself. Above that level, the self-permission system closes, not loudly, not dramatically, but through a series of automatic adjustments that bring the experience back toward the level the inner self considers appropriate. This is why people can attract large amounts of money and then spend, lose, or undermine it until it returns to their practiced level. This is why people can enter relationships, careers, or circumstances of genuine quality and then unconsciously erode them until the situation returns to something more familiar. The mechanism is not self-destruction in a dramatic sense. It is the automatic operation of a practiced degree of permission. The blueprint contains a practiced relationship with the future. The old self does not simply experience the present. It projects forward from the present using the design file of past experience. When you imagine the future, what you are actually doing is extrapolating from your practiced inner positions. And if those positions include habitual financial anxiety, a practiced ceiling, a rehearsed language of lack, automatic emotional reflexes of withdrawal and skepticism, and a narrative identity of someone who struggles, then the future you project from those positions looks remarkably like the past. Not because the future is predetermined, but because the imagination is operating from the same blueprint that has shaped every chapter before this one. The mechanism is now visible. The blueprint is the repeated thought, habitual expectation, practiced emotional reflex, identity narrative, self-permission system, and future projection that together constitute the hidden self. This hidden self does not wait for your permission to operate. It operates automatically, continuously, and beneath the level of most deliberate attention. It is not malicious. It is not your enemy. It is simply a pattern, a practiced pattern. And practiced patterns are not permanent. They are persistent. And that distinction is everything. Persistent patterns can be interrupted. They can be redirected. They can, through the same mechanism of repetition and practice, be replaced, but only after they have been seen clearly. And seeing them clearly is what this teaching is designed to produce. The blueprint is not your destiny. It is your current design file, and design files can be redrawn. Understanding the blueprint in theory is valuable, but the teaching becomes precise and practical when you understand the specific pathway through which the blueprint becomes the life you are living. It does not happen through some mystical projection of thought onto reality. It happens through a series of very concrete mechanisms: decisions, speech, posture, opportunity recognition, relational dynamics, and the interpretation of events. Each of these is a transmission point through which the inner blueprint reaches the outer world. Each of them is worth examining in detail. The first transmission point is the decision. You make thousands of decisions each day, most of them without deliberate awareness. Which opportunity to pursue and which to ignore. How long to persist before concluding that something is not working. Whether to ask for what you need or to assume the answer is no. Whether to engage with a new possibility or to protect yourself from the disappointment of failure. These decisions feel like responses to external circumstances, but they are primarily expressions of the inner blueprint. The person whose blueprint includes a practiced expectation of ceiling will consistently make decisions that prevent them from rising above that ceiling, not because they are consciously choosing that outcome, but because the decision-making mechanism is running from the old design file. The second transmission point is speech. What you say about your financial situation, your future, your relationship with success, and your own capacity is not merely a report on existing conditions. It is an active reinforcement of the inner blueprint. When you tell the same story of financial struggle repeatedly, the story becomes more solid, more real, more confirmed by its own telling. When you describe your relationship with money in habitual terms of difficulty, the inner self hears those terms as ongoing instruction and organizes itself accordingly. This is not magic. It is psychology. The spoken word carries emotional conviction, and emotional conviction is the medium through which the hidden self is most powerfully impressed. Every habitual sentence you speak about your circumstances is either reinforcing the old blueprint or beginning the revision of it. The third transmission point is posture, not the physical posture of the body, though that is not irrelevant, but the inner posture, the orientation with which you approach each situation. The inner posture of someone whose blueprint includes practiced self-doubt is different from the inner posture of someone whose blueprint includes practiced self-belief. That difference in posture produces a difference in how they present themselves in conversations, how they negotiate, how they respond to resistance, how they recover from setbacks, and how they are ultimately perceived and received by the people around them. The posture is invisible to casual observation, but it is not invisible to its consequences. The fourth transmission point is opportunity recognition. The blueprint determines what you see, not physically, but attentionally. The human mind processes an enormous amount of information and attends selectively to what the existing inner design file considers relevant. A person whose blueprint includes a practiced expectation of scarcity will genuinely not notice opportunities that a person with a different blueprint would see immediately. This is not willful blindness. It is the automatic filtering function of the practicing mind. The opportunities may be present in the same environment, but the hidden self, operating from its design file, is selectively attending to what confirms its existing patterns and selectively not attending to what would challenge them. The fifth transmission point is what might be called relational resonance. The blueprint you carry affects who you attract into your life, what kinds of relationships you sustain, and what dynamics you reproduce in those relationships. A hidden self that practices unworthiness will tend to sustain relationships that confirm that unworthiness, not by design but by the automatic operation of familiar emotional territory. A hidden self that practices the expectation of being undervalued will tend to occupy positions, professional and personal, that confirm that expectation. This is not because the world is conspiring to confirm your worst beliefs. It is because the inner blueprint is shaping the relational choices and dynamics that feel familiar, and familiar is where the automatic self is most comfortable. The sixth transmission point is the interpretation of events. The same external event can be interpreted in radically different ways depending on the blueprint operating at the time of interpretation. An unexpected setback can be interpreted as confirmation that things always go wrong, or it can be interpreted as a redirection towards something better. A financial challenge can be interpreted as evidence of personal failure, or it can be interpreted as a problem with a solution. A door closing can be interpreted as the end of a possibility, or it can be interpreted as the clearing of a path toward a different one. The external event is the same. The interpretation is determined by the blueprint, and the interpretation more than the event itself, determines the next action taken and the next circumstance shaped. These 6 transmission points together form the pathway from blueprint to circumstance. The blueprint produces decisions that shape outcomes. It produces speech that reinforces inner design. It produces posture that affects interaction and perception. It produces selective opportunity recognition that confirms its own predictions. It produces relational dynamics that replicate its own patterns. And it produces interpretations of events that gather evidence for its own conclusions. Each of these mechanisms is real, concrete, and traceable. None of them require mystical explanation. All of them are operating in your life right now. The cumulative effect of these 6 mechanisms is the life pattern you have been experiencing. The money that comes and goes, the opportunities that appear and then slip away, the ceiling that refuses to move, the relationships with success that follow the same rhythm. These are not accidents and they are not fate. They are the outputs of a system operating from a blueprint. And the blueprint, however long it has been in use, is not permanent. It is practiced. And what has been practiced can, through a different practice, be revised. This understanding carries a responsibility, not the responsibility of blame, because blame serves nothing here. The responsibility of authorship. You are the one who has been practicing the inner patterns that are producing the external patterns. Not deliberately, not consciously in most cases. But the authorship belongs to you nonetheless, and authorship means authority. If the pattern was produced by what you have been practicing inside, then a different practice inside can produce a different pattern outside. This is not a promise of instant transformation. It is a description of law. The same law that built the old life can build the new one, but it requires a different input. And the input begins at the level of the blueprint. There is one additional aspect of this mechanism that must be named, because it is perhaps the most commonly misunderstood. The blueprint also produces external barriers that feel entirely independent of the inner world. When the hidden self practices the expectation of closed doors, it produces behavior that keeps doors closed. Not through any mystical causation, but through very ordinary human dynamics. The person who does not ask because they expect rejection gets rejection through absence of effort. The person who withdraws when things become difficult removes themselves from opportunities that were in motion. The person who interprets early obstacles as defeat stops before the threshold of the breakthrough. These are real barriers. The door really was closed. The opportunity really did not materialize. But the closing of the door and the failure of the opportunity to materialize were the products of inner blueprint operating through the transmission points of decision, speech, posture, recognition, resonance, and interpretation. The external barrier was not imaginary, but neither was it independent. The mechanism is complete. The blueprint becomes circumstance through 6 concrete pathways. Understanding this mechanism does not make you responsible for every hardship you have faced. External conditions are real and they carry weight. But understanding the mechanism gives you something more valuable than an explanation of the past. It gives you a point of intervention for the future. If the blueprint is the source of the pattern, then changing the blueprint is the lever that moves the pattern. And changing the blueprint is possible through the same mechanism of deliberate, sustained, repeated inner practice that built the original design file. That is the teaching of James Allen. And it begins right now in the inner world that is always within reach. Everything that has been taught so far in this presentation has been moving toward a single point of practical decision. That decision is this: you must stop trying to renovate the old self and begin building a new inner builder. These are not the same thing. Renovation assumes the existing structure is fundamentally sound and merely needs updating. A new builder assumes the blueprint itself must change. And for anyone who has experienced the pattern of the same life rebuilding itself, despite sincere external effort, the renovation approach has already been tried. What has not been fully tried is the deeper reconstruction of the one who is doing the building. The shift begins with a change of position. The old self asks, "What do I need to change out there in order to get a different result?" The new self asks, "What must change in here so that the builder I bring into each new situation is capable of producing a different outcome?" This is not a passive question. It is a more demanding question than the external version because it requires honest self-examination rather than environmental management. It requires looking at the automatic inner life, the habitual thoughts, the practiced expectations, the rehearsed language, and the emotional reflexes, and taking responsibility for these as the actual territory of transformation. The posture of the new builder is not one of denial. This is important to say clearly. The inner shift that James Allen is teaching is not a performance of optimism in the face of difficulty. It is not a refusal to acknowledge real challenges. It is not the pretense that the current circumstances are fine when they are not. The new builder is honest about the present condition, but the new builder refuses to allow the present condition to become the fixed expectation, the permanent identity, or the operating blueprint for the future. The new builder holds the present condition as the current output of a system that is now changing and therefore capable of producing different outputs. The new builder practices a different relationship with thought. Where the old self returned habitually to thoughts of financial stress, ceiling expectations, and practiced lack language, the new builder begins the deliberate cultivation of different inner habits. Not the forced repetition of statements that feel false, because forced repetition without emotional engagement does not change the blueprint, but the sustained, honest, patient redirection of inner attention toward a different set of practiced positions. The new builder practices catching the habitual thought and making a deliberate choice about whether to continue it or to redirect it. Not once, not occasionally, but as a sustained daily discipline. This is what James Allen meant when he described the development of character through thought. He was not describing a passive process in which good things happen to good thinkers. He was describing an active, sustained, disciplined inner practice of choosing, again and again, the thought that builds the character you are committed to becoming. And the character you are committed to becoming is not a performance for others. It is the genuine inner reconstruction of the self that meets every situation with a different inner design file. A design file that includes an expectation of possibility, a practiced relationship with receiving, a habitual sense of personal permission for prosperity, a rehearsed inner position that says, "I'm the kind of person for whom good things arrive and remain." The new builder changes the inner language, not through mechanical repetition, but through genuine inner revision. The language of "this always happens to me" is replaced not in dramatic declaration, but in quiet, consistent redirection. When the old phrase surfaces, the new builder does not suppress it with force. The new builder simply declines to continue practicing it, and then deliberately turns attention toward a different statement, a statement about a different inner relationship with money, success, and possibility, not a statement that denies the present difficulty. A statement that refuses to make the present difficulty the permanent design. The new builder revises the expectation. This is perhaps the most demanding aspect of the inner shift, because expectations are often held with great conviction precisely because they have been confirmed by experience. But Allen's teaching asks you to understand that confirmed expectations are not evidence of permanent external reality. They are evidence of a practiced inner position that has been consistently expressed through the 6 transmission points of the mechanism. Changing the expectation does not mean ignoring history. It means refusing to let history be the only evidence considered when building the design file for the future. The new builder changes the relationship with the unfamiliar. The old self experienced unfamiliar success as unsafe. The new builder practices experiencing the unfamiliar not as danger, but as the territory in which a new life exists. This practice is not comfortable in the beginning. The unfamiliar is, by definition, not what the inner self has been practicing. It will feel uncertain. It will generate the impulse to retreat to what is known. The new builder does not eliminate this impulse. The new builder recognizes it as the old self making its case, and then chooses to remain in the unfamiliar territory, long enough for it to become practiced, long enough for the new position to become the new automatic response. The shift is not announced. It is not declared in a single moment of emotional resolution. It is accumulated through the sustained daily practice of building a different inner self in the ordinary moments of ordinary days. The decision to become a new builder is made in the morning quiet, when the old thought surfaces and is gently redirected. It is made in the conversation where the old language tries to surface and is deliberately replaced. It is made in the moment of small opportunity when the old reflex of skepticism arrives and the new builder chooses to engage rather than withdraw. It is made in the face of the early obstacle when the old interpretation of defeat is present and the new builder chooses the interpretation of redirection. James Allen's teaching is clear on this point. The new life belongs to the new self. Not the self that merely desires a new life, not the self that intends to change, not the self that knows intellectually that change is possible, but the self that has actually practiced its way into a new inner design. Character is formed through thought. Character shapes circumstance. Change the thought. Build the character. Live the circumstance that the character produces. This is the law. And the inner shift is your deliberate, sustained daily decision to begin practicing the character that the life you want actually requires. The door does not open when the circumstances improve. The circumstances improve when the door opens. And the door opens when the identity standing before it has genuinely changed. This is what the inner shift is building toward. Not a new plan, not a new environment, not a new strategy, a new builder. A builder who carries a different design file into every new beginning. A builder who expects something different, speaks something different, interprets something different, decides from something different, and thereby produces something different. That is the shift. And it is available to you, not in some future moment after the circumstances have improved, but right now, in the inner world that is always within your reach. The shift is this. I am no longer renovating the old self while hoping for a new life. I am becoming the builder who belongs to the new life, and I am doing this through the same mechanism of practice that built the old builder, one repeated inner choice at a time. A teaching without a practice remains a beautiful idea. James Allen's entire body of work was directed toward the lived application of inner law, not merely the understanding of it. The inner shift described in the previous section is not a single event. It is a practice, and the practice requires a specific daily discipline that many spiritual teachings gesture toward, but rarely describe with enough precision to actually use. The practice described here is drawn directly from the spirit of Allen's teaching and is designed to be used in the ordinary moments of every ordinary day. The practice begins with a daily question, not a question to be asked once at the start of the day and forgotten. A question to be returned to regularly, carried as an inner instrument of observation throughout the day's experience. The question is, what did I rebuild today through thought, speech, reaction, and expectation? This question is the primary tool of the new builder. It is not a question designed to generate guilt or shame. It is a question designed to generate awareness, and awareness, according to Allen's teaching, is the precondition of all genuine inner change. At the end of each day, or at any pause point during the day that permits a moment of reflection, bring this question honestly to your actual inner experience. What thoughts did I return to most frequently regarding money, success, and my future? Not the thoughts I intended to have, not the thoughts I would choose in a moment of deliberate reflection, but the thoughts I actually practiced during the ordinary flow of the day. These are the thoughts that are forming the character that is shaping the circumstance. And they can only be revised if they are first honestly seen. What did I speak today about my financial situation, my prospects, and my capacity? Not in formal moments of declaration, but in casual conversation, in private self-talk, in the language I used to describe my circumstances, when no one was listening carefully enough to notice. Allen's teaching places particular weight on the words that carry emotional conviction, because those are the deposits into character that have the most formative power. The daily practice requires honest attention to this spoken layer of the blueprint. How did I react to the small difficulties that arose today? Did the automatic reflex of defeat, withdrawal, or anxiety arrive and run without interruption? Or did I catch it, pause, and make a deliberate choice about how to respond from the new inner position? The daily practice does not require that every old reflex be successfully redirected. The old patterns have been practiced for years, and they will not dissolve overnight. The practice requires only that the awareness is present. The noticing is the beginning. The noticing is more valuable than any affirmation. Because the noticing is the first moment of genuine separation between the observing self and the automatic pattern. What did I expect today? Not in formal moments of intention setting, but in the quiet background assumption that accompanied each action. Did I pursue the opportunity while quietly expecting it to fall through? Did I work toward the goal while internally assuming the usual ceiling would appear? Did I engage with the possibility while the hidden self was already preparing for the familiar disappointment? These background expectations are the ones that matter most because they are the most consistent. And consistency is the language the inner self understands most fluently. Having asked the question and received an honest answer, the second element of the practice is the gentle revision, not the forceful suppression of the old pattern, because suppression does not revise the blueprint. It simply drives the pattern beneath the level of observation while it continues to operate. The gentle revision is the conscious redirection of inner attention from the identified old pattern toward a deliberate new one. Not a dramatic affirmation, not a forced emotional performance, a quiet, sincere, patient turning of the inner compass toward a different position. If the day's observation reveals that money anxiety was the dominant inner practice, the revision is not to declare "I am wealthy" in a way that feels untrue. The revision is to practice a different inner relationship with the question of money, a position that says, "I am learning to trust a different relationship with supply. I am practicing an expectation of provision rather than an expectation of shortage. I am building a new character in relation to money, one patient daily choice at a time." This is not denial. This is deliberate inner construction. If the day's observation reveals that the familiar ceiling expectation was operating, the revision is to practice quietly and consistently a new inner permission level, not to demand instant access to a dramatically larger life because the inner self must be led gradually toward new territory, but to practice the thought, the feeling, the inner position of someone for whom a larger experience is genuinely permitted. To sit with that thought, not once but repeatedly, not for a few moments, but with sustained inner engagement until it begins to accumulate into something that feels increasingly like character. The practice does not require perfection. It requires honesty and persistence. James Allen was not describing a discipline for extraordinary people in exceptional circumstances. He was describing a practice for ordinary people in ordinary lives who have decided to become the deliberate architects of their inner world rather than the unconscious inheritors of whatever pattern formed in the absence of attention. The daily question, the honest observation, and the gentle revision are the three movements of this practice. They take no special tools, no special time, and no special knowledge beyond what this teaching has already provided. The practice is the shift in motion, and the shift in motion, sustained across the ordinary days of an ordinary life, is how the hidden self that has been rebuilding the same life quietly, patiently, inevitably becomes a new builder capable of building something different. There will come a moment, possibly several moments, after you have genuinely committed to the inner shift, when the old life calls you back. It does not call loudly. It does not announce itself as the old pattern returning. It arrives in familiar forms, wearing familiar faces, speaking in familiar voices, offering familiar emotional territory. And its pull is not trivial. The familiar is not a weak force. It is one of the most powerful forces operating in the inner life, precisely because it has been practiced for so long that it feels like home, even when it is the home you are trying to leave. The old pattern may return through the familiar fear. A financial challenge arrives and the old anxiety surfaces with all of its practiced authority. It does not say, "I am the old blueprint returning." It says, "This is serious, this is real." This requires your full attention and probably confirms the thing you have always been afraid of. The fear arrives with the language of wisdom and the urgency of genuine threat. And in that moment, the work of the new builder is tested. Not because the challenge is not real, the challenge may be entirely real, but the question is whether the new builder can hold the new inner position in the presence of real difficulty, or whether the old emotional reflex will reclaim its authority. The old pattern may return through familiar people, the people who knew the old you, who have a practiced relationship with the old you, and who, not out of malice but out of the deep conservatism of familiarity, will relate to you in ways that assume the old blueprint is still in operation. They will ask questions that assume the old ceiling. They will offer advice shaped by the old limitations. They will respond to your new inner position with the confusion of someone for whom your old position was the familiar reference point. And their response, however well-intentioned, will create pressure to return to the self they recognize. The pull of other people's familiarity is subtle and powerful, and the new builder must learn to remain centered in the new design file while navigating these relational pressures without resentment. The old pattern may return through familiar excuses. These excuses are more dangerous than they sound because they are not fabrications. They are accurate observations of genuine external difficulty delivered at moments when the new inner commitment is under pressure. The economy is not cooperative. The timing is challenging. The resources are limited. The competition is significant. All of these may be true, but the old self uses these true observations as permission to return to the familiar inner position of limitation. The new builder must learn to acknowledge the truth of the external challenge without allowing that truth to override the new inner design. The challenge is real. The new builder is also real. Both can coexist. The familiar emotional home is perhaps the most seductive form of the old pattern's return. There is an inner experience, a combination of low-level anxiety, familiar self-narrative, and practiced emotional position that, however uncomfortable, has been your home for a very long time. And when the territory of the new inner life begins to feel unfamiliar, when the new expectations do not yet feel natural, when the new inner language has not yet settled into automaticity, the old emotional home exerts a quiet, gravitational pull. It says, "Come back. This is where you know who you are. This is where things make sense, even if what makes sense is a pattern you are trying to leave." James Allen's teaching on this point is firm. He understood that the return to the old mind is not a sign of irreversible defeat. It is a sign of the test. Every person who genuinely attempts inner transformation encounters the test of the familiar return. The old pattern is not gone simply because the new practice has begun. The old pattern has been practiced for years. The new practice has been underway for days, weeks, or months. For some time, the old pattern will be the stronger pull precisely because it is the more practiced one. And the test is whether the new builder will treat the old pattern's return as permanent defeat or as a temporary visit from a pattern that is losing ground. The new builder must understand what the return of the old pattern actually means. It does not mean the inner shift failed. It does not mean change is impossible. It does not mean the teaching is untrue. It means the old pattern is still practiced enough to resurface under pressure, and that the new practice must continue. The return of the familiar is not a refutation of the new life. It is the test of commitment to it, and every time the new builder recognizes the old pattern, names it as the old pattern rather than as truth, and chooses to return to the new design file, the new practice deepens, and the old pattern loses a measure of its automatic authority. Familiar excuses must be examined carefully, because they are the most intellectually convincing form of the old pattern's return. The excuse carries evidence. The excuse is reasonable. The excuse often has the support of other people's agreement, and so it feels like wisdom rather than retreat. But the new builder has developed the practice of asking a deeper question. Is this a genuine external assessment, or is this the old self using a true observation to justify returning to a familiar inner position? The answer to this question determines everything, because if the assessment is genuine, the new builder can work with it practically. But if the observation is being used as an emotional exit from the new commitment, then accepting it is a surrender to the old blueprint dressed in the clothing of wisdom. The test is also present in the delay. When the inner shift has been genuinely underway, and the outer circumstances have not yet reflected any corresponding change, the old pattern will use the silence of the outer world as evidence that the new inner practice is not working. This is the critical test. Because the outer world does not mirror the inner world instantaneously, there is a period, sometimes a significant period, during which the new inner practice is deepening, but the outer expression of it has not yet materialized. During this period, the old self presents the absence of external confirmation, as proof that the inner work is either futile or incorrect. The new builder must hold the new design file through this silence, not through forced optimism, but through the practiced understanding that inner cause precedes outer effect, and that the absence of visible result is not evidence that the law has failed. The test may also arrive in the form of success. When something genuinely goes well, when a door opens or an opportunity materializes or a financial situation improves, the old self can use the excitement of the positive moment to draw you back to its territory. It says, "See, now you can relax. Now you can return to the familiar." The urgency for inner transformation is less pressing when things are going well. And in this relaxation, the old patterns begin to reassert themselves quietly. The new builder must understand that the test of positive circumstances is as real as the test of negative ones. The new inner practice must be continued not only in difficulty, but also in ease, not only when the old life is clearly calling, but also when the new life appears to be arriving. The return of the old pattern is not the end of the story. It is the middle of it. It is the point in every genuine transformation narrative where the real commitment is revealed. Not the commitment declared in a moment of inspired resolution, but the commitment practiced in the ordinary, tired, pressured, uncertain moments when the old life feels like the only real option. In those moments, the new builder makes its most important contribution, not through dramatic gesture, but through the quiet, faithful decision to continue building from the new design, one inner choice at a time. Remain. That is the instruction. When the old life calls, remain in the new position. Not perfectly, not without difficulty, but persistently, because persistence in the new practice is the mechanism by which the new practice becomes the new automatic, the new familiar, the new home. There is a question worth asking. How will you know that the inner shift is genuinely underway? How will you know that the new builder is replacing the old one rather than simply overlaying the old pattern with new language? This is an important question, because the answer is not found in the external circumstances alone. External circumstances change slowly, and they are influenced by many factors beyond the inner blueprint. The signs of genuine inner change appear first in the inner world, in the quality of the automatic responses, the nature of the habitual thoughts, and the posture with which the new self meets each new situation. The first sign of genuine change is the gap. Before the inner shift began to take hold, the old automatic response arrived and ran without interruption. Fear came, and you were afraid. Doubt came, and you withdrew. The old language surfaced, and you spoke it. The familiar expectation arrived, and you expected accordingly. The gap appears when there is a moment of space between the old automatic impulse and the subsequent action. That gap is the new builder's most reliable early sign. You notice the old reflex arriving. You do not instantly follow it. You pause, even briefly. That pause is the evidence that a new observer is present, and the observer is the builder. The second sign is the quality of your inner language, observed honestly over time. The habitual sentences you speak to yourself about money, success, and possibility will begin to shift in character. Not dramatically at first, but a different quality of inner language will become increasingly present, not because you are forcing yourself to speak positively, but because the inner design file is genuinely changing and the language is following the design. When you notice that the habitual inner sentence has changed without deliberate enforcement, this is the evidence of real inner revision. The third sign is the quality of your responses to small, unexpected positives. The old self tends to receive small positive events with a particular automatic response. Yes, this is good, but it will not last. Yes, this arrived, but something will take it away. Yes, this opened, but I cannot trust it yet. As the inner shift deepens, the response to small positive events begins to change, not into naive certainty, but into a genuinely different quality of reception. The new builder begins to receive small positive events as belonging to a pattern that is consistent with the new design, rather than as anomalies that are likely to be corrected by the return of the familiar. The fourth sign is how you meet early obstacles. The old self treated early obstacles as confirmation of the familiar pattern. This always happens. The usual outcome is forming. The old self used first resistance as permission to retreat. The new self meets early obstacles with a qualitatively different inner response. Not absence of concern, but a different interpretation. Not confirmation of defeat, but recognition of the normal friction that precedes a breakthrough. When you notice that you are interpreting the first difficulty differently than you used to, this is not performance. This is the new design file operating. The fifth sign is the automatic decisions that are emerging. As the inner blueprint changes, the decision-making mechanism changes with it. Small decisions that you make without deliberate attention will begin to reflect the new design. You will choose to engage where you previously withdrew. You will ask where you previously assumed the answer was no. You will remain where you previously retreated. These are not grand dramatic choices. They are the small, automatic decisions of daily life. And their gradual shift in character is the most reliable evidence of genuine inner change, because automatic decisions are the direct output of the operating blueprint. The sixth sign is your relationship with possibility. The old self related to possibility with a particular mixture of desire and protective skepticism. The desire said, "I want that." The skepticism said, "But it will not materialize." As the inner shift deepens, the relationship with possibility changes. The protective skepticism begins to lose its automatic authority, not because you have become naively optimistic, but because the practiced inner position is genuinely changing. You begin to hold possibility with a different quality of inner relationship, one that allows you to engage with it fully, rather than holding it at the distance required to protect yourself from disappointment. The seventh sign is how you respond to the return of the old pattern. In the early stages of the shift, the return of the old pattern carries its full old weight. It feels definitive, authoritative, and permanent. As the inner shift deepens, the return of the old pattern begins to feel different. It still arrives, it may still feel uncomfortable, but it no longer feels permanent. You recognize it as the old self making a familiar argument rather than as the truth making an accurate announcement. This recognition, this ability to see the old pattern as a visiting pattern rather than as the permanent self, is one of the clearest signs that a new builder has genuinely taken up residence. Do not demand an instant new life as evidence of inner change. The outer life changes more slowly than the inner life, and demanding rapid external confirmation will cause you to dismiss the real signs of change that are already present in your inner world. The quiet strength of the new builder is precisely this. It does not require the external world to confirm it before it continues building. It knows, with the same quiet certainty that James Allen taught, that the inner cause is already in motion, and that the outer effect, faithfully, inevitably in accordance with the law, will follow. You have been brought, through the full arc of this teaching, to a single moment of inner decision. Not a decision about a plan. Not a decision about a strategy. A decision about the builder. The same life that has been recurring in your experience is not a sentence. It is not proof of permanent limitation. It is not the universe's verdict on your worth. It is the output of a builder who has been operating from an unchanged blueprint. And that builder is not fixed. That builder is you. And you, unlike the circumstances that seem to surround you, are within your own reach right now. James Allen wrote about character forming thought by thought, choice by choice, day by day. He was not describing a dramatic event. He was describing a patient accumulation. The character that has been forming the familiar life was built through the same patient accumulation of practiced inner responses. And the new character, the one capable of building a different life, will be built through the same patient accumulation applied in a new direction. There is no shortcut. There is no dramatic external intervention that replaces this work. But there is also nothing preventing this work from beginning right now, in the inner world that is always within your reach. You are not required to wait for the circumstances to improve before becoming the new builder. The new builder does not wait for a better situation to begin practicing the new design. The new builder begins in the present situation, with the present resources, in the present conditions, and brings a different inner architecture to the current reality. This is not pretending the current reality is different. It is choosing to be different within the current reality. And being different within the current reality is the mechanism by which the reality itself eventually changes. The thought you practice becomes the character you inhabit. The character you inhabit becomes the circumstance you experience. This is the law. It does not require your belief to operate. It is operating regardless. The question is whether it is operating from the old blueprint or the new one. And the answer to that question is being written right now, in the inner choices of this present moment, in the thought you return to when this teaching is finished, in the expectation you carry into the next ordinary challenge, in the language you use to describe your relationship with money, possibility, and your own future. There is an old self that knows exactly how to rebuild the same life. It is practiced, it is fast, it is automatic. It does not need your cooperation because it has been operating for years without it. But there is a new builder available to you, one that is built through patient inner practice, through the daily question honestly applied, through the gentle revision of the habitual thought, through the quiet choice to hold a different inner position in the face of a familiar pressure. This new builder does not yet have the speed or the automaticity of the old one, but it is real. And it is becoming more real with every deliberate inner choice made in its direction. The old self will make its case. It will present the evidence of every past confirmation. It will speak with the authority of long practice. It will dress itself in the language of wisdom and realism and practical caution. And you will need to learn to hear it, to acknowledge it, and to decline its invitation. Not with force, not with suppression, but with the quiet authority of someone who has seen the mechanism clearly and has decided to operate from a different level of the system. You have seen the blueprint. You have traced the pathway from blueprint to circumstance. You know where the lever is, and you have decided to move it. The new life belongs to the new self. This is Alan's most essential teaching, and it is the one that carries the most practical consequence. Not the self you plan to become someday, not the self you aspire to be in ideal conditions. The new life belongs to the self you are building right now, through the quality of your present inner practice. And the present inner practice is always within your authority. Always. Even when the circumstances are difficult, even when the old pattern has returned, even when the external world has not yet confirmed the internal shift, the inner practice is always available, and it is always building. The only question is what it is building. You have spent enough time rebuilding the same life from the same blueprint, not because you chose to, but because the blueprint was invisible and the mechanism was unexamined. It is visible now. The mechanism has been examined. The path from inner cause to outer effect has been traced in specific detail. The practice has been given. The test has been named. And the decision, the real decision, the one that all of the understanding has been building toward, belongs entirely to you. The declaration is not a wish. It is not a hope. It is not a performance for an audience. It is a committed inner statement made by a self that has genuinely seen the hidden builder and has genuinely decided to replace it. Say it with the weight it deserves. Say it as someone who knows what it means, what it costs, and what it promises. Say it as someone who is choosing right now to become the new builder of a different life. I no longer rebuild the same life from the old self. If this teaching has reached the part of you that recognizes the builder, if you have heard in this presentation the description of a pattern that you know from the inside out, if you are ready to bring genuine attention to the hidden self that has been quietly reconstructing the familiar in every new situation you have entered, then let this moment become a point of inner commitment, not a performance, not a declaration made for others, a real inner decision made right now in the privacy of your own inner world. And then, as an act of that commitment, write the declaration in the space below. Write, I no longer rebuild the same life from the old self. Let it be the first sentence of the new builder's log. James Allen left behind a body of teaching that is, in many respects, more relevant to the modern experience of financial pressure, repeated limitation, and spiritual confusion than it was to the world in which he wrote it. The law he described is precise and it is patient. It does not reward those who understand it without applying it, but it responds faithfully to every sincere, sustained, daily practice of the inner revision it requires. The next teaching in this series will take you deeper into the specific territory of identity, into the relationship between the self you have been practicing and the life that self is capable of receiving. When you are ready, remain with this channel and let the next law meet you. The masters did not offer these teachings as comfortable philosophy. They offered them as precise instruments of inner change for people who were willing to use them seriously. If that is who you are, then the teaching has found its student. And the student, by their sincere daily practice, will in time find their new life. If you are ready to continue walking through the teachings of James Allen and the other masters, remain with this channel. The next law is already prepared, and it will meet you exactly where this one has left you, at the threshold of the new builder's first full day of deliberate inner work.